dark haze. Ladies of the night with eyes of red, vampires in the alleys where good men dread, wolfmen howling beneath the pale moon. But justice is coming and coming soon. From saloons to graveyards where evil sleeps, they walk among us, secrets they keep, nightmare hunters with souls ablaze, cleaning up this town through the dark haze. Cryptids themselves, yet they stand tall against the darkness, answering the call for every lost soul, every whispered prayer. They fight for the light in the midnight air. From saloons to graveyards where evil sleeps, they walk among us, secrets they keep, nightmare hunters with souls ablaze, cleaning up this town through the dark haze. The night is young, the hunt begins. For against the darkness where hope never ends.
Good evening, folks, and thank you guys for joining us on another edition of the Nightmare Hunter podcast. In the studio with me tonight is Robbie Jed Rains. Doc's hiding from the paparazzi, meaning he's actually had to work. The orders were backing up at Dark Angel, and he's working on fulfilling some orders, so Doc couldn't be with us tonight. So you have to put up with me and the Jed Meister tonight. Robbie, how you doing, brother?
Tired, but I'm here.
I hear you. Those of you who were with us on Monday night, I paused at the beginning of the show to talk about what had happened here in the Ozarks here. There was an incident where a deputy was killed, and later that night when they actually caught up with the guy who did it, he killed another one and wounded two others. I didn't really know the two deputies that were killed very well. I'd only met one of them multiple times. The other one I think I met in passing. So I didn't know them very well. But one of the guys who was wounded was one of the guys I trained when we worked at the hospital. I won't say his name for privacy reasons. But he took a round to the leg, tore him up pretty bad, shattered his femur. It takes a lot of force to shatter a femur. He's stable. Appreciate the prayers for the two officers that were wounded, and prayers for the families of the officers who were lost. And we're not just putting lip service to us proudly supporting our first responders and our military veterans. This one hits pretty close to home, especially considering, one of the guys shot was one of mine at one time. There were some tears shed. And I appreciate you guys praying for him. And it's going to be an ongoing thing because a wound like that to the femur, it's going to be a while before he's walking again. He may even have to learn how to walk again when it's all said and done. That's a pretty nasty wound. So appreciate you guys. Appreciate all the prayers. I probably ought to move on to other things before I actually start crying right here on the air.
Take it away from me for a second. To kind of flip that on the positive note. If y'all remember a couple of months ago when I put the video out of the Greenville City police officer who was shot with the incendiary rounds, he is recovered. He was at the State of the Union address last night with Representative Tim Scott.
Good for him.
So, it's not always the bad. Sometimes the bad works out into the good, and he's survived and made a full recovery. So, thank y'all for prayers on that too.
Judy, thank you very much for that. Appreciate that. Robin, yeah, they got him. The subject is deceased. It happened from what I was given, there was a massive firefight near Reed Springs, Missouri, where they found him. And I don't know how many rounds were expended, but when people I know who've been in combat said it was a lot, it was a lot. So it must have been a hell of a firefight. Northwood says, how about that 100-year-old vet being presented with the Medal of Honor? That is fantastic, too. I absolutely loved that. Sorry it took so long for him to get it, but he certainly earned it. Rodney, you ain't wrong, brother. You ain't wrong. Anyway, let's grab the old rope and drag this one back to the subject matter at hand. So let's just go ahead and jump into this. Like I said, unfortunately, Doc's not going to be here with us tonight, and Steve hopefully will be back with us on Saturday. But Doc's just swamped at work, and Steve always works on Wednesday nights. So hopefully, Doc, Robbie, and I can handle it. We've done it before. We'll probably do it again. So we're just going to jump in with both feet and see where this takes us. So tonight's episode is about Zone Delta, the Night Siege Files. 6 multi-night encounters from America's most active regions. Because when the sun goes down, the zones wake up. When the sun goes down, the world doesn't just get quiet. It gets honest. Because in the dark, the things that watch us during the day finally step forward. They test the walls. They circle the house. They breathe against the glass just to see if you'll notice. Tonight, we're opening the files on 6 real encounters. 6 encounters where families, hunters, and entire communities learn the same terrible truth. Some creatures don't just appear. They return again and again and again. You'll hear footsteps on porches, miles from the nearest road. Hands far too large to be human, dragging across the siding. Something pacing the property line until dawn. And the moment when the watchers stop watching and start closing in. So before we begin, another reminder, we're all in good health. We're not going anywhere. We don't plan to disappear anytime soon. This show is for entertainment purposes only, and these cases are presented exactly as they were reported. If you're new to the Nightmare Hunters, please make sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell, and join the growing community that refuses to look away from the things that most people pretend aren't there. Because tonight, we're stepping back into the dark recesses of Zone Echo. And once you understand what happens after dark in these regions, you'll never hear a knock on your door the same way again. So tonight, we're jumping in to Zone Echo, the Night Siege Files. Robbie, you want to take this first one?
Zone Delta.
Zone Delta. Did I say Echo?
Yeah, twice.
Oh, okay. Zone Delta. Zone Delta. My bad. I know what I meant.
I just want to make sure I was reading it right because you said it twice, and I was like,
I'm an idiot.
I know my eyes are bad, but are they that bad? Anyway.
Had echo on the brain, apparently.
Yeah. Segment 1, Taylor, Mississippi, the regional pattern. Sources are local newspaper archives, the Lafayette County, Mississippi. Regional law enforcement call logs and deputy statements, eyewitness interviews collected by Southern Bigfoot research groups, oral histories from families in the Taylor-Oxford region, and independent field investigator reports 1970s through the 1980s.
And folks, this is not the siege at Lockett Ranch. This is another completely different incident from Taylor, Mississippi.
The Watchers in the Dark. Night in Taylor, Mississippi doesn't fall, it tightens. It draws in around the houses like a living thing, pressing against the windows, setting into the tree line, and swallowing the last traces of daylight until the whole world feels suspended and waiting. In the late 1970s, the people of Taylor began to notice something strange around their nights, or about their nights. It wasn't one event, and it wasn't just one family. It wasn't even on one property. It was a pattern, a slow creeping awareness that something was moving through the community after dark, something that didn't belong to the woods or the farms or the quiet rural roads, something that walked with purpose, something that watched. The first reports were small, a farmer hearing footsteps outside a barn long after midnight, a mother waking to the sound of gravel shifting under slow, deliberate weight, a child insisting that someone or something was standing outside their bedroom window. Most families try to explain it away: raccoons, stray dogs, trespasser passing through. But raccoons don't stand 7 feet tall. Stray dogs don't cast shadows that blot out a porch light. And trespassers don't return to the same houses night after night, circling them like they're studying the layout. One woman described waking to the sound she couldn't place, something like a deep, rhythmic breathing, not human, not animal, but something in between. She followed the sound to her living room window, and when she pulled the curtain back, she saw nothing but darkness until the darkness moved. A massive silhouette shifted just inches from the glass. She couldn't see its face, but she could feel it, feel the weight of its attention, the intelligence behind it, the way it leaned in as if trying to understand her reaction. She dropped to the floor and crawled backwards, too terrified to scream. Another family reported rocks, smooth, river-rounded stones thrown at their siding, not tossed, hurled, hard enough to leave dents, hard enough to wake the entire house. One man described hearing footsteps pacing around his home in a slow, deliberate circle, not wandering or random, but a full perimeter sweep. He said it felt like the creature was walking the fence line of a prison yard, except he was the one trapped inside. Sheriff's deputies came out more than once. They walked the property lines. They shined flashlights in the woods. They took statements, but they never stayed too long. And they never found anything that they could put on a report. One deputy years later admitted off the record, "We heard it. We all heard it. But we weren't equipped to deal with whatever that was." The strangest part wasn't the footsteps, or the rocks, or even the breathing. It was the consistency. Different families, different nights, different properties, all describing the same creature. Massive, upright, broad-shouldered, dark, silent when it wanted to be, and unafraid of being seen. This wasn't a one-off encounter. This wasn't a curious animal, and this wasn't a roaming intelligence. A creature moving through the Taylor region with purpose, testing boundaries, learning routines, and returning again and again. One family reported that the creature would stand at the edge of their yard, just beyond the reach of the porch light, swaying slightly from side to side. Not nervous, not agitated, just watching. Another described hearing something tap on the window, 3 slow, deliberate taps, followed by the unmistakable sound of something massive stepping away into the darkness. A man living on the outskirts of Taylor claimed he saw the creature crouched beside his shed, its eyes reflecting a dull amber glow. When he raised his rifle, the creature didn't run. It stood up, slowly, deliberately, and stepped backwards into the woods, never breaking eye contact. He said it felt like the creature was telling him, "I know what that is, and I'm not afraid of it." The activity continued for months, then years, always at night, always the same pattern, always escalating, just enough to remind the families that they were being watched, but never enough to force a confrontation. Because in Zone Delta, the creatures don't rush, they don't panic, they don't lash out without reason. They escalate slowly, deliberately, methodically. And Taylor, Mississippi was only the first step.
Pretty interesting that multiple locations described identical behaviors.
Yeah. I mean, I got cold chills when I was the guy was talking about it standing out there, because that's reminiscent of my encounter.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the window peeking, it was looking in your back door.
Yep. It was doing both. It was doing that in the back door. So double cold chills.
Well, the rock impacts is interesting, but rock impacts are more kind of Bigfoot than Dogman. But they've had both sightings in the area around Taylor.
Yep. Well, I mean, it really, if you look at that, listen to, it's like some people had a Dogman maybe walking around their house, and some people had a Bigfoot.
Oh yeah,
because I would say that definitely this one in the window peeking was, well, window peeking could be Dogman too, but definitely the one standing there doing this, I'd say that's definitely a Bigfoot. I don't know too many stories of Dogmen throwing rocks at people or houses, so I'd say that's probably Bigfoot.
Yeah, that's generally a Bigfoot behavior.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably an overlap area.
But that slow, deliberate circling of the houses, that both of them have been reported doing that, both Bigfoot and Dogman.
But we haven't had as many of Bigfoot reports where they've circled like that. Usually, they come up, smack on a house, and walk off. We've had a few, but for the most part, they don't. I guess there are shared behaviors depending on what the situation is. But for the most part, Dogmen don't throw stuff, but I guess they could if they really wanted to.
Oh yeah, they've certainly got the hands for it. But these were, I wouldn't really classify them as aggressive, but then again, I wasn't having it outside my house, so it's hard for me to sit here comfortably in a desk chair and say it wasn't aggressive when the feeling that they got could have been purely aggressive.
We can say it. We can say that it was not openly or overly aggressive. I'm sure in that situation we would both feel completely different about that, but there didn't appear to be any type of openly aggressive behavior other than just,
Don, that's exactly what we've thought about down around Table Rock Lake. At certain times of the year, the Bigfoot are more active, and at certain times of the year, the Dogmen are more active.
And I think in these overlap zones, that's how they keep the peace, so to speak, for lack of a better term. I mean,
right.
Because if you got two big apex predators like that are competing for food at the same time, it's a bad day for just about anything that's on the menu. Including
what was it that old boy said on the first Red Dawn? Two toughest kids on the block. Sooner or later, they're going to fight.
Yep.
And the kind of telling what the law enforcement response was, that they knew it was out there. They heard it. They experienced it, but they didn't know what to do about it.
We ain't equipped for that. Yeah.
Well, I can kind of get that. I mean, I rolled to a few prowler calls. I'm like, yeah, I don't know that. I don't know. This is really my cup of tea here.
But just, and obviously this is something that the police should be called for.
Right.
So don't take that or what I'm about to say. But people do call the police for things that they should never call the police for. When I first got out of the academy, I got called to this woman's house because she had a possum in one of her drawers of her dressers there. And I'm like, what do you want me to do about this?
I'm not animal control.
Yeah. So, there is a point where we're not prepared for this kind of stuff. But even though you're not prepared for stuff like that, like we're talking, the story we just talked about, absolutely that, we're the first ones that should be called in that situation because we're a lot more qualified more times than the person who's calling.
Yeah.
So there is that, why'd you call me for this factor, but there's also that, oh, I see why you called me for this factor that you got to throw in there.
Yeah, but I kind of have this mental image of you with this possum up against the wall, patting him down.
You got anything in that pouch that's gonna poke me, stick me, or?
We used to add the random things to our pat down speech just to see if we could, throw people off, because you get somebody laughing, sometimes they'll slip up and either tell you something. But
you don't want to run, brother.
Oh yeah, we would say like, you have anything that's gonna cut me, stick me, stab me, or poke me? Anything sharp, any guns, drugs, knives, or nuclear paraphernalia, and that usually always got them. And then I noticed one day my buddy Forrester, he would say, "Do you have anything? You have anything on you that's going to cut me, stick me, stab me, poke me? Do you have any guns, drugs, knives, or small furry woodland creatures?" And I looked at him, and he goes, "I patted a guy down once. He had a squirrel in his pocket." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Mine was hand grenades. I love to say, any hand grenades. They're like, what?
Ryan Lagarde wants to know what happened to the possum.
That was 30 years ago. I have trouble remembering what happened last week, much less what happened to a possum 30 years ago.
He was released on good behavior, released with an ROR bond.
I guess. Like I said, that was 30 years ago. I remember the call, but I don't remember the outcome.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure I got it out of the house somehow, but I don't really.
Did you OC that? Did you OC that poor possum?
No. I have tasted a turtle before.
I never tasted a turtle, but I've threatened to tase a dog before. Like, you don't get that dog under control, me and him are going to have problems.
Before the chat goes crazy on me, it was a snapping turtle, and it attacked my partner. So I was defending my partner. I didn't tase a box turtle or anything like that. It was a dang one of them mud turtles that will take your finger off if you give it a chance.
I patted a guy down one time and got something stuck in my finger, and I thought it was a needle until I pulled it out, and it was a fish hook with line still attached to it. That's an Ozarks thing right there. You got any fish hooks in your pocket that I need to know about? Well, anyway, multiple families in different locations reported the same thing. So what do you think the perimeter pacing says about their intent?
Well, I mean, it could have been a territorial thing. Like pacing off this, this is in my territory and I'm trying to, or it could have been for something a little darker, but it never escalated to that. So that's why you kind of have to, I guess, kind of lean towards maybe it was just their property was in its territory and it was just, in
some of these areas that are hot spots, I would love to be able to sit down sometime with a bunch of deputies off duty, off the record, off the books, and find out and hear the stories that they don't tell.
Yeah.
I bet some of these more rural counties, especially in places where it's, notorious hot spots, I bet the guys down in Stone County could tell you some stories if you could get them to tell you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure some of the guys up here that Rodney and I know in Pickens County, but up in places like where I sat the first book, I'm sure there's, which, one of the guys that works for me now, when he went to the sheriff's office, he actually had, I've told you the story of the thing he had happened down in Clemson, which is a known hotspot at the, over behind the T. Ed Garrison Arena, which is where they have rodeos and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's and I can't think of the name of what it's called. Rodney, if you remember, put it in the chat. But it's a story that goes back years and years. It's something like the hide behind or the something behind, I think. Like, basically, it's one of those things that, like, you can be walking in the woods and then you hear the noise behind you and you turn around and there's nothing there, but then you hear the sound behind where you just, where you turned and was facing just a minute ago, then you'll hear the same thing behind you that way. It's like the hide behind or something like that. And then that goes into the
that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
So I know that we're not talking about the violence level, but how would you compare, like, the stalking incidents here at Taylor? How would you compare those to, say, Honneby or Falk?
Obviously, they're a couple steps below that. They didn't get into the, actually trying to get into. Looking in the window and kind of smacking the side of the house is one thing, but actually trying to get into the house, I think that elevates up.
A different animal.
Yeah, maybe literally.
Yeah, maybe literally too. Yeah, exactly.
But I don't think it's just because it didn't go to that level in this area doesn't mean that it couldn't have, or
Right.
that it may not. I mean, it may
Well,
just be
consider Taylor's the area where Siege at Lockett Ranch happened. I definitely think there's the potentiality for violent encounters.
But we talked about there were certain factors that we feel kind of bumped that up a notch or two from what it may be. Like that wasn't that the one where they were down there cutting the wood and ended up shooting at something?
Mhm.
Or
Yeah.
So maybe these others are just they haven't had that little cap off incident that set things off. I honestly think that siege that we talked about, I think it probably would have been different had they not done the things that they did. And I'm not
faulting them for it. I can't say that I wouldn't have done the same.
right.
Especially if it was like getting close to my family and raiding my food.
I'm just saying I feel like that had they not done that, I don't know that it would have went to the extreme that it went to, is what I'm trying to say.
Dusty J has a good question. It says, it seems to me that there's people that live just outside the Joel Bald recreation area. Did you guys happen to get a chance to interview anyone that lives in that area or on that peninsula? I've talked to people that have had sighting encounters in Joe Bald or on the road near Joe Bald. But at the same time, the people that live out in that area are very reluctant to talk to people. We've approached several people, and either they don't want to talk at all or they play it off. And then there was one lady I talked to at the old Joe Bald Market. I asked her about it, and she just looked me dead in the eye and goes, "You better hope you don't run into something like that down there." And she said, "If I was you, I'd stay out of there, especially after dark."
Yeah, that's the one that we went into the night before to get.
And the next day it was closed.
Closed for renovation. We're like,
this was just open last night. No signs, no nothing saying why they were closed. It's open again, but I haven't seen that old lady since that night.
Maybe she shouldn't have talked to us.
Maybe she shouldn't have.
Maybe she got a visit from the 24-hour service van.
That is entirely possible because that was the night we got the 24-hour van.
Exactly.
That was the night we talked to her.
Maybe the bush.
We ain't seen that van since.
No, maybe the bush outside the store. Yeah. Heard what she
went in and had a little chit chat.
I mean,
you said too much.
We're making jokes about it, but still, that.
Yeah. Well, how I learned about it was from Stone County deputies. So I know that there are lots of stories out of there. It's just the locals will not talk about it.
Well, and the thing with that is, like, and we've said it so many times before, and there may be people in here that don't know what we're talking about, but the first time that DA took me into Joe Bald, there's not any houses inside that camp area. There's nothing that needs, no houses that need any kind of service vehicle, number one. Number two,
there's nothing in Joe Bald for there to be a service vehicle for.
And as we go in there, we see one of these big white panel van or box trucks, and it's got 24-hour service on the side of it. Don't know what that 24-hour service was, but
no phone number, no service that they present, just 24-hour service. So,
we kind of speculate on what kind of services they were rendering. So maybe they went and rendered some 24-hour service to that old lady down there. I hate to say it, but.
Well, like I told you, that all of the quote-unquote disappearances that we had originally found associated with the park are now listed as possible drownings due to fishing. And that's not how they were reported before. These were people that went missing in the park, not while fishing. Northwoods, I would not be surprised. I mean, honestly, especially the more we dig into the zones, I would not be surprised if we don't get some sort of visit, or mysteriously start having a lot of trouble, a lot of technical issues with the show, which we kind of did the other night when my audio died.
Yep.
24-hour Dogman grooming services. That's funny. Robbie, you want to segue us into the next one?
Sure. So if the Taylor creatures were testing the perimeter, Skamina County was where the creature tightened the circle. Because it's in Washington State, the cabin wasn't just watched, it was surrounded. Segment 2 begins now.
Segment 2 is from Skamania County, Washington, where a cabin was circled, and the sources for this comes from the Skamania County Sheriff's Office historical notes and deputy recollections, the Washington State Bigfoot Protection Ordinance of 1969 and 1984 revisions, eyewitness interviews from residents near the Columbia River Gorge, Pacific Northwest field investigator reports from the 70s through the 90s, and local oral histories preserved by families in the Wind River and Carson areas. There are places in America where the forests just don't surround you. It studies you. Skamania County, Washington is one of those places. Very dense timber, steep ridge lines, fog that rolls in like a living thing, and a silence so deep it feels like the world is holding its breath. In the 1980s, a small cabin tucked into the foothills of the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest became the center of a multi-night siege, one that would leave a family inside convinced that something in those woods wasn't just alive, it was organized. The first night started with a sound. The family just couldn't place it. No footsteps, not the wind, something heavier, something deliberate. A thud against the outer wall of the cabin. Then another. Then a slow, dragging scrape that moved from one corner of the cabin to the other, as if something was tracing the outline of the structure with its hand. The father stepped outside with a flashlight. The beam cut through the fog, illuminating nothing but trees, towering, silent, and unmoving. But the feeling of being watched was immediate and overwhelming, like dozens of eyes were staring from just beyond the reach of the light. He went back inside and locked the door, told his family it was probably just an animal. But animals don't surround a cabin, and animals don't coordinate. The second night, the sounds returned, louder this time. Heavy footfalls circling the cabin in a slow, methodical loop. Branches snapping under heavy weight, too heavy to be a deer. And a low, resonant exhale that vibrated through the walls. Then came the rocks. Not pebbles, not gravel, fist-sized stones hurled from the tree line, striking the roof and sliding with enough force to striking the roof and the siding with enough force to shake dust from the rafters. The family huddled together, listening as the impacts moved around the cabin in a pattern. Left side, back wall, right side, like something was testing the structure, probing for weaknesses. Father called the sheriff's office. The deputy on duty told him, "Stay inside. We're not sending anyone out there tonight." That was the moment the family realized they were on their own. Night 3 was worse. The creatures, because by then it was clear it was more than one, closed the circle. Footsteps approached from multiple directions. Shadows moved between the trees, tall and broad, gliding silently except for the occasional crack of a branch under immense weight. Something pressed its face against a window, fogging the glass with slow, heavy breaths. The mother screamed, and the creature didn't flinch. It just leaned closer, as if it was trying to get a better look inside. The father fired a warning shot through the ceiling. The creatures retreated to the tree line, but they didn't leave. They paced, they watched, and they waited. The family couldn't sleep. On the 4th night, the creatures returned with a new tactic, surrounding the cabin completely. Footsteps on all sides, shadows shifting in every window, a low rumbling growl that seemed to vibrate through the floorboards. Then something tried the doorknob, turned it, tested it. The father braced the door with a dresser. The creatures circled faster, their movements synchronized, coordinating like a pack communicating without a sound. The family described the moment as being hunted from the outside in. By dawn, the creatures were gone. There were no tracks left behind, no bodies, no evidence except the dents in the siding and the memory of something massive breathing against the glass. The family left the cabin that morning and never went back. And here's the part that makes Skamania County different from anywhere else in America. The county then passed a law making it illegal to kill a Bigfoot. Not as a joke, not as a tourist gimmick, but because too many people had seen something in those woods. Something large, upright, and intelligent. Something that didn't just appear, it surrounded. And in Zone Delta, surrounding is the step before the strike.
Hmm.
Yeah, they were surrounded by a large group.
It's interesting that they passed the law after that.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of places that have those laws on the books now. If it was just a joke, why would they bother wasting legislature time to pass a Bigfoot protection law? Of course, Oklahoma went the other direction, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah. I mean, you know,
But if they didn't believe in it, why would they bother passing that law?
yeah. I mean, well, it's just like we've raised the question before too. If it wasn't real, why was it in the Army Field Manual for as an animal that you can see in the Pacific Northwest? You know,
Yeah.
It just at this point it takes more to believe that it actually believe it's a hoax than to believe that it's real.
Right.
With the sheer amount of evidence that's out there.
And, and stories like this coming from, believable people, not just the kook of the week that they're interviewing like they did back in the 70s with the old UFO stories. Yes, I was out there and I saw the aliens and they stole my chickens. Yeah, it's not like that anymore. There's a lot of very credible people have had sightings and they share them. And it's not just the media making fun of people anymore. There's some legit claims. I mean, being brought forth by people with stuff to lose.
Did you see what Hillary put on it? I can't put it on the screen.
I didn't see it.
Look at Hillary's last comment.
Just a second, I'll bring it up. There we go. In the county next to Skamania, Whatcom County, there's an actual Bigfoot refuge. Huh. Oh, that's interesting.
That's very interesting.
That is very interesting. Well, the one thing interesting about this story about the cabin is they changed tactics. I mean, every night they tried something different.
Yeah,
if that just been a bear or something like that, they'd have probably come up and scratched on the door or knocked over the trash cans. But these things tried different tactics each time.
Yeah. It's like, oh, well, that didn't work. Let's try this.
Right.
Let's try this.
And chucking rocks the size of your fist, that requires some upper body strength. But I don't know about you. If I saw something fogging up the window, I'm either closing the shades or, heck, I don't know what I would do. I'd be flipping the heck out. I know that.
Yeah.
And I'm fairly certain here, Robbie. Correct me if I'm wrong, but bears don't try the doorknob.
No. Now we did figure out that they've learned how to pick locks. Remember?
Oh yeah, pick locks on trailers, and they can fold clothes and pick wallets out.
We figured out where the lock picking lawyer got that big surge of followers. It's the black bear population in the United States has started following him, so they learn how to pick locks. I mean, it's the only plausible explanation for bears that can get inside locked doors.
Right. So what do you think about law enforcement saying we're not sending anybody out there at night?
I've never worked for an agency that's refused to send an officer for a call for service. That's weird for me.
That is very weird for me.
So I don't know. I mean,
because I know when I even worked for a little bitty Ash Grove, most of the time I was the only one on duty overnight.
Oh,
so yeah, I'm going.
I've been that way at Liberty and Pickens. Been the only officer on duty for a 12-hour shift. Rodney will tell you. Rodney's been the same way. You can't pick and choose. Oh, I'm not going to that one.
Yeah. This just doesn't work that way. But for the sheriff's department to say, yeah, we're not sending somebody out there at night, they knew what was out there.
That's what it sounds like to me. Oh, is it Hillary's birthday today? Happy birthday,
Hillary.
What are you like, 22, 23?
There you go. 21 and holding.
21 and holding.
Northwood says the only thing remotely violent I've experienced is when the wall of my bedroom was hit in the middle of the night. Well, my brother, I that is a terrifying, very terrifying thing to have happen. But yeah, you'd be glad that's all you've had. As I've had nightmares about some of the crap we've ran into out in the woods. Yeah, my favorite reaction though was Robbie the first time I took him down to Joe Bald. I'm like, when we were about a mile out, I just looked over at him and go, "Hey, do me a favor." He said, "What's that?" I said, "I did this with Doc too. Tell me when you think we're getting close." And we were not even 100 yards from Joe Bald, and he's like, "We're there, aren't we?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, it's just up around this bend." He's like, "Yeah, I've been feeling it for a minute or two. This is getting creepy out here." And that place is. I mean, even the drive out there where there are houses, the woods are still so thick you half expect to see something walk across the road in front of you.
Yeah.
I mean, you're almost back to Kimberling City before it starts looking like civilization again.
Yeah, it's a whole different animal, but you know, past that, Combs Ferry, and maybe because we went in there the first time on the water, pitch black, but even when we drove in to that service road that time, it still felt like just being in the middle of nowhere, even though you were on a road.
Yeah. Yeah, and driving into Combs Ferry, looking around, when you drive into that area, then walk in, dude, it's like post-apocalyptic in there. It really is.
It's almost hard to believe it's got the same feeling, but it looks like two totally different places depending on which way you come in.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
almost hard to believe that it's the same spot because I don't know if, like I said, if it's
the first time you and I and Wyatt and everybody went in there, it was the middle of summer and everything was fully overgrown. I mean, all the plants were out. When we went in with Doc, it was wintertime and you could actually see into the trees, but you still got that heebie-jeebie feeling.
Oh yeah, for sure. But that's like the LBL. I mean, being out there during the day in the woods during the day was just that same eerie feeling. You're just like.
Mary Stoughton says, I think I told you all about the game warden that came to my house and told me that the 7-foot Dogman at my window was a possum. Yeah, it's like the game warden down in Jury Mincy telling those people that it was a raccoon that tore their tent up. I'm used to seeing those 700-pound raccoons tearing through tents.
Yeah, they're apt to do that.
Yeah. But probably a good thing that raccoons don't get that big.
Oh, God.
Raccoons are mean.
Well, I mean, a 30-pound boar coon can seriously mess up coon dogs.
Yeah, I've seen them drown coon dogs before.
Yeah, I was about to say, especially if they get in water.
Yeah, they fall them out in deep water, and coon dog has a good chance of not coming back out of it. If he does, he's going to be bloody. Raccoons are a mean animal when they want to be. They're cute and all, don't get me wrong, but there's a feral intelligence there when you look at them. Oh, yeah. They're working the angles. But anyway, the law enforcement not refusing to send anybody out there at night is pretty telling. So this wasn't just curiosity. This was containment. Whether Dogman or Bigfoot, hard to say. Probably Bigfoot in this case, but there was definitely a group assessing that whether that cabin could be breached or not.
Yeah, I would say the same thing with the rock impact and wind fogging, doorknob test, especially the rock impacts and the doorknob testing. I'd say that has to.
Well, since this is in Skamania County, They have far more Bigfoot reported sightings than Dogman. In fact, Dogman out in that part of the West Coast, like in the Pacific Northwest, pretty rare to have a Dogman sighting out there. But Bigfoots are, well, that's a big hotspot for Bigfoot. So my guess is that it was a group of Bigfoot that had surrounded that cabin, and they were certainly coordinated while they were looking at ways into that cabin. It clearly shows a level of intelligence there.
Oh yeah.
Trying the doorknob, dude, that is one detail that always creeps me out. I mean, when you at that point, you know, whatever's on the other side of that door's got a hand.
Just think about how deep-seated that fear is. How many scenes in horror movies do they focus on a doorknob being jiggled like that? That's done for a reason.
Oh yeah, it's psychological terror at its finest.
Yeah. So I mean, that's for something to be able to try a doorknob and actually work it. That's just that, you know, that uncanny valley thing. There are things out there hunting us too much like us.
I totally agree, and I'm fairly certain that if that door had not been locked, they would have got a good face-to-face view of what was trying to come in. I think it would have come in.
Oh yeah.
Vincent Tipping says, I've only heard a few times where Dogman is in groups. Is that true, DA? Most Dogman encounters I've heard were individual sightings, but I have heard that they do move in packs. In fact, that night I was down, when I was down in LBL by myself, over in Demumbers Bay when I played that Dying Rabbit call. Yeah, I brought a group of them in, and I saw the eye shine when I was backing out with my van. I realized how much I'd cut myself off, and when I was backing out and played those headlights out, I guarantee those were Dogmen, and there was several sets of eye shine watching me. And that night when we pulled out of Combs Ferry, well, again, I still think that was a Bigfoot encounter. There was probably a dozen sets of eye shine on the shore.
Yep.
And Northwoods is right. A doorknob being turned's not as bad as an arm coming through the dog door.
That was an arm and a head too, wasn't it?
Arm and a head. It was like up to one shoulder in its head through that dog door. Oh boy, went and got a piece of plywood and wood screwed that right over that hole. No problem, Vincent. But yeah, you know, to kind of further expound on your question there, Vincent, a lot of encounters do consist of individual encounters, but there's a good number that people have seen groups. So I would say Dogmen are just as capable of moving in packs as any other big predator. In fact, Lockett Ranch. Lockett Ranch was definitely a pack of them. Palmyra, there was a group of them at Palmyra.
Yep.
So yeah, there's plenty of encounter stories where they came in groups and they came to put the fear, not just the fear of God in them, but they came to put claw out a butt. If you get my drift. K Bauer says that's worth a mag dump. Dang right. Roxanne says, I think Dogman like the feeling of fear coming off a human. It feeds its anger. I think they do too. I think there's something about fear. And I read once something, there was a tribe somewhere. I want to say it was in South America somewhere. I can't remember. It's been a long time. But they would frighten the cattle before they would kill them, because when they were in terror, the blood filled all of its muscles and everything, and they said it improved the flavor of the beef. So I'm wondering if it might be something similar. They like that adrenochrome or just adrenaline. They like that than the blood engorged muscles. It's probably more flavorful for them. So my guess is that's why they do it. John Owen says, that's why I have several speed loaders. I'm right there with you, my dude. We go when we go out in the woods, we go well magazined. We've got about 5 minutes before we have to stop for commercials. Well, 4 now. So we're not quite ready to jump into this one. So how would you compare that with the cabin to, say, Ape Canyon? Similar area.
Yeah. I don't think it hit that.
Nowhere
same
near
level.
as violent, obviously.
Yeah, that's what. It was. I mean, obviously, to the people inside, it was probably just as scary as it was to the people inside Ape Canyon. But
after he cooked off a round, I'm surprised that didn't incite something.
Well, and that's what I was getting to. But there again, we've theorized that that Ape Canyon.
He shot into the roof.
Right. But
Ape Canyon, they shot one.
Yeah. And that's, in my opinion, that's probably the difference maker right there. It went from, and there again, maybe that's a what we call a genetic memory now from the ones in that area, same area.
Oh yeah.
They know what a gunshot means now, so they hear it and they back off.
Well,
but just backed off.
When me, you, and Noah drew our guns, they stopped coming forward. I truly believe they understand what a firearm is. They may not understand how it works or what it's called. They understand that when the humans have got something in their hand, there's a loud noise and something hurts.
Yeah. Well, and they probably got a really good sense of smells, and they probably smell the gunpowder and the oil and gun oil and stuff like that. I mean, so. And they've seen hunters shoot deer and see the deer fall and die, and they know that the boomstick causes permanent damage.
Well, Lone Queen says the cortisol and the adrenaline might give some kind of high to the creatures, especially with their apparently enhanced sense of smell and pheromone detection. So that's entirely possible. I mean, other predators chase their prey down, and of course the meat will be full of adrenaline and blood at that point too. So maybe it's just a predatory thing.
Yeah, I mean, it very well could be.
Yeah. So what do you think about the Skamania County passing a Bigfoot protection ordinance that same year?
That's pretty interesting. Well, like we said before, why would you do that if it was a joke? I mean, why would you even waste the time and the energy? Because you know that you're going to get crucified in the papers for that, regardless of whether you're doing it as a joke or. So if it was a joke, it seems like that would be something that would have to be.
Well, think of how many news reporters would have a field day. Like, you guys got nothing better to do than waste taxpayers' money passing a law about Bigfoot?
Yeah. So it seemed like
we've got violent crime out here, and you're passing laws protecting Bigfoot.
So it seemed to be like it was something that everybody knew. Okay, this is serious. It's real. Otherwise, there would have been a metric ton of, let's make fun of this city government or county government or whatever it was for doing this.
Challen says it's very telling about the county and the sheriff's department. Yeah, I clearly believe they knew exactly what was going on out there. They're just not sending somebody. Northwood says the law about Bigfoot's just a coincidence.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No connection whatsoever.
We just decided that we needed to pass a law because we don't want people going out and shooting Harry from Harry and the Hendersons.
Right. And Vincent, I've seen copies of those maps. I want to get a copy to keep for myself. But I've seen those in private collections that have those old maps, including I've seen the Army Field Manual that listed Bigfoot as a potential threat for the Wilderness Survival Course. Vicky, I believe it is. It's Washington. Washington has one in place for no killing of Bigfoot. Florida actually has one as well. Miss Lene says it's ad time. All right, Miss Lene. Thank you for. Time to pay the bills, folks. Time for us to take a quick pause. Go ahead and top off your coffee, walk the dog, hit the bathroom, whatever y'all need to do, and we will be right back.
Hey everybody, this is Kerry Pocket Doc Davis from Dark Angel Medical, and you are listening to DA Ex Machina with DA Roberts. You may recognize me or some of my products from Dark Angel Medical in some of the Apex Predator, Lakeview Man, and Wild Hunt books, and you can get those products at www.darkangelmedical.com, along with training classes on how to use those products and save a life. Shoot us an email at info@darkangelmedical.com and be the difference.
The new book, How to Research a Haunted House by paranormal investigator Margie Kay and professional researcher Violet Wisdom, is now available from Unex Media. This one-of-a-kind book explains how to do research on a house with uncommon methods and resources used by historic home researchers, and how to determine who may be doing the haunting and why. How to Research a Haunted House can be used by homeowners, renters, investors, and it should be in the library of all professional paranormal investigators. Get this unique book at unexmedia.com or amazon.com. That's unexmedia.com or amazon.com. In a world where monsters still walk the earth, one author dares to face them. From the brutal cryptid horror of the Apex Predator series to the Ozark legends that stalk the night in Lakeview Man, from the elite warriors of codename Wild Hunt to the relentless investigations of the Nightmare Hunter and the frontier terror of Dark Frontiers. When the dead rise, the Ragnarok Rising saga unleashes pure zombie apocalypse fury. And across the stars, war rages in the Lost Legion and man's marauders. And in the realm of myth and steel, the world of Vanguard calls to those born for legend. Cryptids, zombies, sci-fi warfare, epic fantasy. This is the universe of D.A. Roberts.
And we are back, folks. Thank you guys for sticking with us. We're going to jump right back into this. So if Skamania County was the moment that the creatures closed the circle, Estacada, Oregon was the moment they stepped onto the porch. Because in the deep woods of Oregon, the creature didn't just surround the cabin, it came right up to the walls. Segment 3 starts now.
Segment 3, Estacada, Oregon, the Porch Stalker. Clackamas County Sheriff's Office call logs and deputy recollections, eyewitness interviews from residents near the Clackamas River and Mount Hood National Forest, Pacific Northwest field investigator reports from 80s and 90s, local oral histories preserved by families of the Estacada Three Links region, and independent researchers' notes from Oregon Bigfoot Investigation Group were all the sources for this story, or stories, or whatever the case may be. The thing on the porch. There are places in Oregon where the forest doesn't feel like scenery. It feels like a presence, alive, aware, and listening. Estacada is one of those places. Dense Douglas firs rise like cathedral pillars. Fog drifts low across the forest floor, curling around roots and fallen logs like pale fingers. And at night, the silence becomes so complete that even the smallest sound feels amplified, magnified, like the woods are leaning in to hear. In the early 1990s, a family living in a remote cabin outside Estacada learned that silence can be a warning. Because when the forest goes quiet, something else is listening. The first night began with a sound they couldn't place. A single heavy footstep on the porch. Not a creak, not a shift in the boards. A step. Deliberate, weighted, unmistakably bipedal. Father grabbed a flashlight and opened the door. The beam cut across the porch, revealing nothing but empty boards and swirling mist. But the feeling of being watched was immediate. an electric pressure in the air like static before a lightning strike. He stepped outside, and the woods just swallowed the light. The silence deepened, and somewhere just beyond the tree line, something exhaled, a low, resonant breath that vibrated in his chest. He went back inside, locked the door, and didn't sleep. Second night, the footsteps returned, not one, but several. Slow, deliberate pacing across the porch boards, or across the porch boards. Heel, then toe, then weight settling in a soft groan of the wood. Then came the brushing. Something massive moved along the outer wall of the cabin, dragging a hand, or something like a hand, across the siding. A slow, scraping glide that traveled from one corner of the cabin to the next, pushing at each window and listening or smelling, or as if listening or smelling. The family huddled together, whispering prayers, too afraid to look outside. On the third night, the creature escalated. It encircled the cabin. It didn't stay in the tree line. It stepped on the porch again, this time with enough force to shake dust from the rafters. The father raised his rifle. The creature responded by stepping closer. Shadow passed across the window, broad, tall, impossibly still. Then a sound, a deep, rumbling growl that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Father fired a warning shot through the ceiling, but the creature didn't run. It didn't scream. It didn't even flinch. It simply stepped off the porch and waited. The family described the moments as being studied by something that understood fear but didn't feel it. Night 4 was the breaking point. The creature returned with a new tactic, testing the walls. Something pressed against the siding hard enough to bow the boards inward. The windows rattled in their frames. The porch boards groaned under shifting weight. Then came the breathing, slow, heavy, wet, right against the glass. The mother said she could see the condensation forming on the inside of the window, tiny droplets trembling with each exhale. Father called the sheriff's office, and the dispatcher told him, "We don't send deputies out there after dark." There's that again. He asked why. Dispatcher wouldn't answer him. The creature circled the cabin for hours, stepping on the porch, brushing walls, pressing against the windows, pacing the perimeter like a predator testing a cage. By dawn, it was gone. The family packed their belongings and left that morning, and they never returned. And here's the part of the investigation the investigators still talk about. Porch boards were bowed, the siding was dented, and the windows, though unbroken, had smudges 7 to 8 feet off the ground, as if something had leaned in close and watched. In Estacada, the creatures didn't just surround the cabin, it came right up to the walls and touched them. It tested them. Because in Zone Delta, the porch is the last warning before the breach. A lot of the same things from in that one from
Right.
the last. So starting to form a pattern here.
Lone Queen says that low resonant breath seems like a good candidate for infrasound or something similar for communication. Just regular breathing doesn't have that quality. That makes sense. Oops. Mondoc says window fogging, 45 ACP ventilation holes. Yeah, but then you got to replace the glass. But, you know, the way those things were pushing in on the walls, hard enough to flex the boards.
Yeah. I mean, that seems to be like a common occurrence with what they're doing. Testing the structure, seeing if, maybe seeing if they can coax somebody into running outside.
Right. Well, Dr. Sharp asked, well, how come we never hear about them breaking in? Because I'm pretty sure if it came in, we wouldn't hear the story at all.
Yeah. And that may be like when we talked about the story about the deputies that were inside that old boathouse.
Mm-hmm.
We know if it wanted to bring this cabin down, it could have. But I don't think that was the intention. I think it's it knows if it wants to get push that wall down or rip that door off the hinges or break one of those windows out, it's going to do it. I think
Right.
it's trying, it's probing to see if it can get somebody to run out. Kind of like kicking an ant nest.
Right. And if they come out there to them, it's a lot less dangerous than them trying to come in the building.
Right.
Especially if they know they're armed.
So,
And that's, and multi-nights, that happened over at least, 4 or 5 nights?
Yeah. At least 4.
And I'm interested to know why law enforcement won't send anybody out there at night. Because that wouldn't fly here.
No.
The officer might go, oh, crap, but he's going.
Of course, we don't work in areas that have stuff like that happen regularly.
This is true.
Maybe that's a long-standing thing that, sheriff or chief or whoever says, I don't care how bad you want to go out there. You do not go out to places like this after dark.
Especially by yourself.
Yeah. So maybe that's just the...
Well, this was definitely zone delta escalation. They were getting braver and coming in closer. And certainly not afraid to make their presence known.
Yeah.
So the behavior is pretty consistent here. Close range observation, testing the structure, coming up on the porch, not really afraid of firearms, and no retreating after warning shots.
Well, and we've seen in the past that they have retreated from warning shots. So,
Right. At this point, I think the only thing that stopped them from coming in was probably the fact that there was a warning shot.
Yeah.
If it just been people inside screaming, I think they'd probably come on inside. But it's like that, that predator evaluation. Is this meal worth the risk of getting wounded?
Yeah. Like I said, I think that's why they don't go in more. And yeah, who's to say that some of these abandoned cabins that have just fell in over time that nobody's gone to, how do we know that those weren't cabins that they actually did go in, and that's why they're abandoned and fallen in, is because one of them things actually did go in.
Dusty J says Joe Bald's only half a mile wide and 3/10 of a mile to the nearest house. How are they getting back and forth without being seen constantly? Well, even though there are houses out there, that area is still heavily wooded, and I think they use the lake. I think they use the lake to get around because there have been sightings. Dusty, if you know where Joe Bald is, you know where Ants Creek is, and Ants Creek's not that far down the lake. By road, it's a bit of a drive, but if by water, it's not very far. But there's been sightings at Ants Creek too, but they didn't shut that park down.
Believe me, if you've been out there, you don't even have to ask that question. You can see how they get around and how they would get around. Especially when it's grown up and thick, because they can move really freely. I mean, that little nest hunting blind that we found, I was in it. DA knew where I was at and knew what to look for, and he turned around after he's about 12, 13 yards away and couldn't see me, and I was right off the trail with that. So if something's in there that's wanting to hide, it can get around without being seen. Trust me.
Oh yeah. Robbie, you want to take us into 4?
Yep. If estacada, I always want to say estacada. Estacada was the creature testing the walls. The Red River borderlands were where the creature tested the people. Because in Texas and Oklahoma, the thing pacing the property wasn't just curious; it was hungry. Segment 4 begins now.
This is the Red River borderlands, the predator in the fence line. Sources for this story come from the Red River County, Texas, and McCurtain County, Oklahoma Sheriff's Office call logs, eyewitness interviews from residents along the Red River corridor, independent Dogman researcher field notes from the 1990s through the 2000s, livestock incident reports from rural veterinary services in the region, and oral histories preserved by families near the Texas-Oklahoma border. So we're going to jump right into this. The Red River doesn't just divide Texas and Oklahoma. It divides really two worlds. On one side, farmland and ranch houses. On the other side, dense river bottom thickets so tangled and dark that they swallow sound. Locals say the river has moods. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it growls, and sometimes it goes absolutely silent. In the early 2000s, several families living along the Red River corridor began reporting something that didn't fit any known predator. Something that moved like a shadow but hit the ground with the weight of a bull. Something that paced the fence line every night just out of sight, but never quite out of their awareness. The first family to report it lived in a small farmhouse less than a quarter of a mile from the river. They described hearing something walk in the perimeter of their property. Slow, heavy, deliberate footsteps that crunched gravel and snapped branches underfoot. At first, they thought it was a stray cow. Then they realized cows don't walk on two legs. The footsteps were bipedal, measured, predatory. The father stepped out into the yard with a spotlight. The beam swept across the yard, catching nothing but the glint of barbed wire and the pale shimmer of river fog. But then he heard it. A low, guttural growl that vibrated through the ground and into his bones. He backed into the house and locked the door. The next night, the creature returned. This time, it didn't stay at the fence line. It moved closer, circling the house, brushing against the siding, leaving long, vertical scratches that cut through the paint and into the wood beneath it. Family dogs refused to go outside. They hid under the bed, trembling, whining, refusing to approach the windows. On the third night, it escalated. The family heard something pacing the porch. Heavy, clawed footsteps that clicked against the boards. Then came the breathing. Slow, wet, predatory. Something leaned close to the front door and inhaled deeply as if smelling the people inside. The mother described it as being hunted by something that knew exactly where we were. Father called the sheriff's office. The dispatcher sighed and said, "We've had other calls tonight. Stay inside." He asked what it was. The dispatcher wouldn't answer. The creature circled the house for hours, occasionally stopping to scratch the siding or to tap the windows with something hard, something like a claw. The next morning, the family found tracks in the mud. Not human, not canine, something in between. Large, deep, digitigrade, with claws that dug into the earth like chisels. A neighbor down the road reported livestock agitation, horses pacing, cattle bunching together, goats refusing to leave their shelters. Another neighbor claimed he saw something tall and wolf-headed standing at the edge of its yard, its eyes reflecting a dull amber glow. He said it watched him for nearly a minute before turning and walking back into the river bottoms, upright, silent, and confident. Over the next week, the calls kept coming in. Something pacing properties, something scratching on walls, something trying to open doors, something moving between houses like it was mapping the territory. One family reported hearing it run, impossibly fast, across their yard, covering the distance in seconds. Another described seeing a silhouette crouch beside their barn, its back hunched, its head too large, its arms too long. The sheriff's office logged the incidents as unknown animal disturbance, but the family knew better. It wasn't an animal. Animals don't stalk multiple properties, and they don't try to open the door. Animals don't pace the same fence line night after night like they're waiting for someone to make a mistake. This was a predator, a thinking predator, a creature that not only understood fear, it enjoyed it. The activity continued for nearly 2 weeks before suddenly stopping. No more tracks, no more sightings, no sounds, just silence. And in the Red River borderlands, silence is the most terrifying sign of them all. Because when a predator stops pacing the fence line, it means it's found a new one.
There we go again with law enforcement agency in the area.
These have got to be areas that get these calls a lot.
Yeah.
My brother was a cop out in Washington State. He's retired now. But he was a cop in Walla Walla, and he said there wasn't a week go by they didn't get 3 or 4 Bigfoot sightings.
And I just wonder if this is one of those things where, or one of those places, or not this, but the ones that we've talked about tonight, are places where, things have happened. that the law enforcement agencies know about, and maybe actively or being forced to participate in the cover up by government agencies, whatever the reason, there's a reason that they have these policies of we don't send nobody out. Maybe it's something higher up than the sheriff or the chief. Maybe they've got a mandate from a 24-hour service truck. Hint, hint. It says, hey, you get these calls at night, you tell the people stay inside and you don't send anybody out there. I mean, we know that's a possibility.
Tracy Jones says, wish I could ask everyone on Dad's side if they grew up around anything. They grew up in Mountain Grove and West Plains. There are sightings down that way. There are tons of sightings on the other side of there down by Eminence. That is a huge hot spot. Lots of sightings down there. Someone said check for a question, and I was looking for it. Roxanne, was that the question, or should I scroll back farther? Pine Nut says, we always have 3 to 4 officers patrolling our area of the county in 10 square miles. When Helene hit us hard and people were shooting at each other for gas and generators, there was none around for days. Hey, it's tough when you're spread thin. I've had nights where I've gone in service and not had a single call all night, and then I've logged in for service and was already down 6 calls. It's feast or famine sometimes, and in a situation like that, when you just had a major catastrophe and everybody's practically looting each other, those 3 or 4 officers that are on duty are spread thin, especially the bigger the area they got to cover. So it sucks, but unfortunately that's the reality of it, because just because something bad happened doesn't mean the department has any extra people to put on duty. Lone Queen says, it seems the level-headed and collected people fare better than those who panic and have knee-jerk reactions. These creatures seem to know the calmer people are more dangerous, because the calmer ones are more likely to fight back. The people that panic and run for cars or just run blindly out into the woods are probably the ones that, we hear those stories where they found an abandoned campsite or they found an abandoned cabin and said, oh, well, they must have just wandered off. Thank you, Miss Lene. Oh, yeah, I did see that. She says she asked what cryptids would do if an air horn blasted at them. I don't know. I don't know that I would want to try that, unless it was just something I could easily try. I was saying the reason I wouldn't use OC on one. That would have to be all I had, because like that, something like that's probably just going to make them mad. I can't say for sure because I've never tried it, but I think an air horn would probably work, especially for like a black bear. But I don't know if it would be a deterrent for an intelligent predator. It might just make it mad. So I don't know that I would try that unless it was literally the only thing I had. So the way this was talking, digitigrade stance, deep heel impressions, very much like what that Latrax we found in Joe Bald.
Yeah.
And we've heard so many different stories about them pacing fence lines.
Yeah, we've had multiple just over the past couple of shows we've talked about.
Oh, yeah.
That.
Well, there was one from here in Missouri where that girl down, I believe it was down by Ava, that said that we kept pacing the fence line, and they finally started putting their animals up at night, and then after a while it went away.
Yep. And the girl was out feeding her horses at night.
Mm-hmm.
Pacing the fence line in that one.
Yeah.
Well,
they coming up on the porch, that's kind of telling. I think when they're on the porch, they're pushing the boundaries at that point.
The one where it body checked the patrol car, that started out with it pacing the fence line.
Yeah, sure did. So I think this is another behavior we can latch onto and say this is a consistent behavior.
Yeah.
So the breathing at the door, do you think they were smelling to see if everybody inside was afraid, or taking a census, seeing how many's inside, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean that's probably one of their best senses is their sense of smell. So I mean,
Right.
they're they're all the above probably.
And horses and cows and goats all getting nervous around these things. I mean, we might have domesticated these animals, but they're evolved from prey species, so it would make perfect sense they would recognize a predator.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because you're not going to, you might domesticate them and make them, more docile, but that's not going to take a fear response from a predator away.
Exactly. So to me, this was like, I don't know, like it was doing recon.
Yeah, I mean, it goes up to the door and takes a good sniff. I mean, it knows more about the door or about what's going on inside the cabin by going up there and taking a good sniff than we do looking in and taking what we see with our eyes.
But at least the sheriffs this time didn't say we're not sending somebody. They just said they've already had multiple reports. To me, that would indicate they've got somebody in the area, but they're not willing to say what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, the unknown animal disturbance is kind of a giveaway, because if it would have been a bear or anything else, they would have simply said that.
Unknown canine species.
Yeah, unknown canid.
Beaker and the FedEx driver.
Yeah, no, I was an Amazon driver here in Missouri.
Amazon.
So, why do you think Dogman creatures escalate faster than Bigfoots? Do you think it's just because they're innately more violent?
It's just a more aggressive species. I mean, look at it this way: Bigfoot's probably more of an omnivore,
Mm-hmm.
and a Dogman, I would say, is probably strictly carnivore. So,
Yeah,
carnivores are always more aggressive than other types of species.
yeah. I mean, look at comparing wolves to say black bears. Black bears will eat meat, but like you said, they're more omnivorous. Whereas wolves, they're meat eaters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
I,
that's typically the gist of it. The carnivores or carnivorous creatures are typically more, and they have to be because they're having to kill the food that they're eating.
Exactly.
Unless they come upon carrion or something like that, they're more than likely they're having to kill what they're eating. Omnivores don't necessarily have to do that. They can eat berries, roots. They can
eat roadkill or whatever they stumble across.
Yeah. So I mean, they don't have to be. I mean, they can be, but they're not as aggressive because they don't have to be to get their caloric intake.
I still like how the sheriff's department labeled this an unknown animal encounter. To me, that's kind of telling. But folks, if the Red River creature was the predator testing people, then Monroe County, Michigan was testing limits. Because in Michigan, the creature didn't just pace the property, it left bodies behind. Robbie, you want to start segment 5?
Sure thing. Sources are the Monroe County Sheriff's Office livestock incident logs from 60s and 70s, eyewitness interviews collected by Michigan Dogman researchers, local newspaper archives from Monroe, Dundee, and Ida townships, oral history preserved by families living near the River Raisin. Is that right? Yeah, Raisin. Thought I misspelled. Looked at that. I was like, no, that can't be Raisin. Corridor. Independent field investigator reports from Michigan Cryptid Studies. The night the dogs went silent. Michigan nights have a different kind of darkness. Not empty, not quiet, just waiting. In Monroe County, the fields stretch wide and flat, broken only by barns, windbreaks, and the occasional line of trees that looks like they're holding back something older than the farms themselves. In the mid-1960s, a series of encounters along the River Raisin corridor would become one of the earliest and most violent Dogman siege events ever recorded. Not because of what people saw, but because of what they found. It began with the dogs. Farm dogs that had barked at everything. Cars, coyotes, strangers, the wind, suddenly went silent. Not quiet, but silent. One farmer described it as the kind of silence that means every animal knows something is out there and they're hoping it doesn't notice them. First night the family heard something moving through the cornfield behind their house. Not rustling, not brushing, something walking. Heavy, bipedal steps that crushed stalks underfoot. The father stepped on the porch with a lantern, and the light flickered out across the corn rows, illuminating nothing but darkness between the stalks. But then he heard it, a low, rolling growl that seemed to vibrate through the ground. Not canine, not feline, but something deeper and something older. He backed into the house and locked the door. The second night, the creature came closer. The family heard it pacing the property, slow, deliberate steps that moved from the barn to the shed to the house, circling like a predator evaluating its prey. The dogs hid under the porch, refusing to come out. Father shined a flashlight through the back window. For a moment, he saw nothing. Then two eyes appeared between the trees, amber, reflective, and too high off the ground to belong to any known animal. The eyes blinked, and then the head tilted, slow, curiously, like a wolf trying to understand a new scent. The father dropped the flashlight. On the third night, the creature escalated. The family woke to the sound of something slamming against the barn door, hard, rhythmic impacts that shook the entire structure. Father grabbed his rifle and ran outside. The barn door was bowed inward, the wood splintering under repeated blows. He fired a warning shot, and the creature stopped. Then it growled, a deep, resonant sound that made the hair on his arms stand up. He described it later as a wolf trying to speak. The next morning, the family found the first body, one of their dogs, torn open, ribs exposed, throat crushed, not eaten, not dragged off, just killed. A message? The sheriff's office logged it as livestock predation, unknown animal. But the father knew better. He'd seen the eyes, he'd heard the growl, and he'd felt the intelligence behind it. Night 4 was the breaking point. The creature returned to the barn, but this time it didn't stop at the door. It climbed up on the roof, heavy footsteps crossing the shingles, claws scraping against the metal ridge. The family huddled inside the house, listening as the creature moved from the barn to the shed to the porch, its claws clicking against the boards. Then came the breathing again, slow, wet, and predatory, right outside the front door. Mother said she could hear it sniffing, long, deliberate inhales, as if memorizing the scent of every person inside. The father fired through the door. The creature screamed, a high, furious howl that echoed across the fields. Then it ran, not away, but around, circling the house at a speed no human could match. The family described the sound as a wolf sprinting on two legs. By dawn, the creature was gone, but the damage wasn't. The barn door was nearly torn off the hinges. The shed roof had claw marks gouged into the metal, and behind the house, in the soft earth near the tree line, they found tracks. Large, digitigrade, deep, with claws that dug into the soil like knives. The sheriff's office took photos, but they never released them. The family moved away within a month. And here's the part of the investigation that the investigators still talk about. The dogs never barked again. Not once. Not at strangers, not at animals, not at anything. It was as if they learned the terrible truth. There are things in Michigan at night that barking won't save you from. Because in Monroe County, the predator didn't just stalk the property, it claimed it.
Yeah, that one's rough.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a definite escalation.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think sending a message by killing that dog.
Oh, yeah. And if
Like, if I can do it to a dog, I can do it to you.
If he hadn't shot through that door, and it probably would have went inside the house that night, because that seems like that was where it was headed for.
Yeah, it seemed like to me it was building to that.
So,
The dog's going dead quiet. Clearly, that was a predator. I mean, domestic animals often sense threats before we do.
And that goes back to what we say: trust your dog.
Always trust your dog. And that thing hitting the barn, to do that to a barn door, that's got to be someone with some very significant strength.
Yeah. And then almost tearing the door off the hinges.
Mm-hmm. Walking on two legs, digitigrade feet, digitigrade tracks. Whew.
And eerily familiar in the description of what happened to the dog to a video that we've seen.
Very similar to what we've seen. That thing going from roof to roof. That's not the first time we've heard that either.
No.
Of course, we've heard the door sniffing thing multiple times tonight.
And what did I say? They get a better picture using that sniffer than we do. And what did she say? She said it was like it was memorizing everybody in there. That's a mental snapshot that it's taken of everybody in that room. It knows every one of their scents. It's almost scary. What?
Kay Bauer says, I wonder what the police would say about a Dogman home invasion and you happen to get it downed. I would say you had to get shut up pretty fast. But more often than not, if it gets inside, I'm going to guess they're going to come back and find a crime scene with either no bodies or unknown animal attack. And then calling this unknown animal, that seems to be pretty common when they know it's something they can't explain otherwise, especially in these small rural counties.
Oh, yeah.
So what do you think these creatures hit the dogs first?
That's the early warning system.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And the fact that it was killed without being fed upon, that's kind of telling.
Yeah, that's a message.
Oh, yeah, loud and clear.
It's
saying, if I could do this to your dog, I can do this to you.
I took your early warning system out. Now what are you going to do?
And the other dogs wouldn't bark after that. They were done.
Well, they saw what happened to the old loudmouth over there.
Yep. He was barking and he got silenced. Yeah, we told you to shut your mouth.
That's Bucky talking to Cap.
Yeah.
Shut up. You're going to get him over here.
I think that thing going from roof to roof is a pretty good indicator that they can do that with trees.
Yeah.
If they can travel from rooftop to rooftop without hitting the ground again, they can do it in the trees.
Yeah. And we still have fears from watching Silver Bullet. No. A little too old to play the Hardy Boys meet Reverend Werewolf.
Still best line in that movie.
That's one of the best movie lines ever, period.
That's a great line.
It's even better because Gary Busey pre-bouncing his head off California Highway.
Well, he was crazy before then. But,
he was crazy like a fox at that point. Now he's just...
That's true.
He's just... I don't even know how to describe him now.
And let's go ahead and roll on into segment 6.
Sure thing. So if Monroe County is the predator claiming territory, then Chestnut Ridge was the predator testing the walls of the human world itself. Because in Pennsylvania, the creatures didn't just circle the cabin, they tried to get inside. Segment 6 begins now.
This happened in Chestnut Ridge, Pennsylvania, the cabin under siege. The sources for this come from the Pennsylvania Cryptid and UFO Flap Archives, Chestnut Ridge region, 1960s through the 80s. Locals newspaper reports from Westmoreland and Fayette counties, eyewitness interviews collected by regional investigators, and law enforcement accounts from rural Pennsylvania deputies. In addition to independent field investigator reports from the Chestnut Ridge corridor. Chestnut Ridge is one of those places where the land feels older than the people living on it. A long, jagged spine of forested hills cutting through Pennsylvania, thick with stories of lights in the sky, creatures in the woods, and things that move between the trees long after midnight. Locals say the ridge has moods. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it watches, sometimes it hunts. In the late 1970s, a family staying in a remote cabin deep in the ridge learned that the forest around them wasn't empty. It was waiting. The first night it began with a sound they couldn't place. A soft tap on the window glass. Not enough to break it, just enough to wake the mother from a dead sleep. She sat up, listening. Cabin was completely silent. The woods outside were completely silent. Entirely too silent. She nudged her husband awake. He listened, and he heard it too. Then another tap. Then a slow, dragging scrape across the outer wall, like something was tracing the cabin with its fingertips. He grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating nothing but trees, towering, motionless, ancient. But the feeling of being watched was immediate. There was a pressure in the air, a weight behind the eyes, a sense that something was standing just beyond the reach of the light, waiting for him to turn his back. So he went back inside, locked the door, but couldn't sleep. The second night the creature returned. This time, it didn't tap. It pounded. Heavy, deliberate blows against the walls that shook dust from the rafters. The children screamed. The mother pulled them into the bedroom. Father grabbed the rifle and shouted into the darkness. The pounding stopped, but the silence that followed was worse. Then came the footsteps. Slow, heavy, deliberate, circling the cabin in a wide arc, moving from window to window, pausing at each one as if listening or smelling. The father shined his flashlight through the glass. For a moment he saw nothing. Then a shape moved, tall, broad, impossibly still. Two eyes reflected the light, amber, unblinking, too high off the ground to be human. The creature leaned closer, the window fogged with its breath. The father stumbled backward, dropping the flashlight. The creature didn't flinch. It didn't run. It didn't even try to hide. It simply stared at him. Night 3 was the breaking point, though. The creature didn't come alone. The family heard multiple sets of footsteps, 3, maybe 4, moving around the cabin in a slow, synchronized pattern. Something brushed against the siding. Something else scratched at the back door. Something pressed its weight against the front wall hard enough to bow the boards. The father fired a warning shot through the ceiling, and the creatures retreated into the tree line. But they didn't leave. They kept pacing. They growled. They kept circling the house. The family described the moment as being surrounded by something that understood exactly how afraid we were. Then came the attempt. Something grabbed the doorknob, turned it, tested it. The father shoved a dresser against the door. The creatures responded with a chorus of low, rumbling growls that vibrated through the floorboards. The mother said it felt like the cabin itself was breathing. The creatures circled faster. Shadows passed across the windows, tall, broad, hunched shapes moving with predatory intent. Something slammed against the back wall hard enough to crack the plaster on the inside walls. The children cried, the parents prayed, and the creatures pressed closer. Hours passed. The siege continued. And then, just before dawn, the creature stopped. No more footsteps, no more growls, no movement, just silence. The family waited until sunrise before stepping outside. What they found still haunts investigators. There were deep gouges in the siding, claw marks on the door and the door frame, muddy prints around the cabin, large, bipedal, but not human. A window cracked from the pressure of something leaning against it. The sheriff's office took the report, but they never followed up. The family left that morning and never came back. And here's the part that makes Chestnut Ridge different from anywhere else. This wasn't an isolated incident. Other families reported the exact same thing. Creatures circling cabins, pounding on the walls, trying the doors, breathing against the glass. A pattern of behavior, a warning. Because in Chestnut Ridge, the creatures don't just watch. They try to get inside. And in Zone Delta, that's the final stage of escalation.
Yeah, a thought occurred to me. Yeah, but a thought occurred to me while you were reading that. You know, in a lot of these, there's a pattern, obviously, and that's one of the things that we're trying to bring up is how these patterns fit into the greater scheme of it kind of fits into what Miss Lene is saying. Even if there's certain things that make you say, "Oh, yep, that's Bigfoot," or certain things make you say, "Yep, that's a Dogman." It's like we said earlier, there are overlapping patterns that both seem to do
Exactly.
depending on the situation, because
But the
that's
claw marks are the kind of telling on this one.
well, but what if it's a Gugway?
Fair point. Gugway or Genosqua.
Yeah, because they've both been reported as having long claws on their toes and their hands.
Yeah.
So the point is there's an overlapping pattern. That there's certain things that might vary, like throwing rocks, but there's certain things that happens no matter which way you just
right. And Bigfoot and Dogman both have tried the doorknobs.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's kind of hard to say. Well, this was unless it's in an area specifically that, like you said earlier, that there's not a whole lot of Dogman sightings or none.
Well, there are a lot of Dogman sightings in Pennsylvania, though.
Right, but I'm just saying overall, generally,
right.
It seems like even when there's in an area where there's no Bigfoot and it's all Dogman sightings, still when you read that, there's a lot of things about some of these cabin instances that sounds like the stuff that Bigfoot do when they're,
exactly.
And vice versa, when there's in an area where there's no Dogman and it's a Bigfoot area, there's things that seems like there's things that they both do.
Me personally, I kind of lean toward this story being a Dogman story, but
Yeah.
I can see it could go either way.
Well, and I mean, just the pacing around the cabin in and of itself is one of those things.
Yeah.
They've both done that. So, I mean, there's, stepping up on the porch and creaking, pushing against the windows, fogging the windows up, pacing around the house,
hitting the impacts on the walls.
All those things like that are kind of synonymous with both. But then you get things like throwing the rocks. It's maybe more Bigfoot, and you got, clawing up the door frames and the doors itself that may be more more heavy towards the Dogman. But there are certain things that just, it seems like it's an overarching thing that both species tend to do. And maybe it's got something to do with when their prey, is trapped in a cage, so to speak. It's just, you know what I mean? That maybe that behavior is triggered by where we're at and what's going on with our situation at the time.
Right. But I got to agree with Northwoods. Doesn't matter if it's Bigfoot or Dogman. There's always going to be one with a major attitude problem. And I think personalities vary from individual, but in this particular case, this seemed predatory.
Yeah.
And the sheriff's response was really not responding. To me, the real pattern that's emerging out of this is that in places where this happens frequently, law enforcement doesn't know how to deal with it, or doesn't deal with it.
I think it's what I said earlier, that in situations like this, it may be that it's a mandate from higher above, like the 24-hour service vehicle.
Right.
You don't respond. You get
that's what the whole zone things are about. The zones are the area where the government is monitoring this activity.
Yeah.
And where the zones overlap, that's where we really run into the most interesting of the encounters.
Yeah. It seems like the closer or the more you dig into this, even though we may uncover some answers about the creatures, it seems like we end up having more questions about why is this way, or why is that way. And I think all that leans more towards involvement.
I definitely agree with that.
Because you can't you get to a point where you can't say that they're not involved,
Right.
especially in those areas that we talked about.
And that's why I think that that we're really hitting it on the head with the zones, because these are areas we know that the government is monitoring these things. I mean, like a great example is that 24-hour surveillance van we saw.
Yeah, and it fits the narrative that we've seen so many other times and so many other stories that we've read that have nothing to do with us and what we saw. But you can't explain that thing being there because what was it there for? There weren't no houses. It was after 10:30 when we got there. So what in the world was it?
There was really no reason for it to be down there.
Yeah. So
I would love to get access to the actual sheriff's reports, but I guarantee you a lot of this stuff was either redacted or not put in the first place.
oh, it's probably an open case, so you can't FOIA it.
No, I'm sure.
Especially if they didn't come back out and follow up on it.
Oh yeah.
Usually you don't close a case out on an initial report unless it's
right. Or just be HBO'd it.
Yeah, or Signal
handled
3
by officer folks.
Well, that's Signal 3 the Signal 3 is handled by officer, no report required. But yeah, unless it's something like that, you don't typically close a report out with the initial. There's got to be a follow-up investigation, and if there's no follow-up investigation, 9 times out of 10, I would say that means that it's probably still an open case.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
If there's no follow-up,
Brian, yeah, I would say there probably are. Probably hiding in plain sight. It probably looks innocuous, or might just have National Park Service offices or something like that, and us just not suspect what it's really there for. But I like you were saying about some of those behaviors overlapping. That's why we do these encounter stories, folks, is because we're studying the patterns of behaviors. And by understanding the patterns of behaviors, understanding the things they do, and hopefully why they do the things they do, it's going to continue to allow us to not only build our database of knowledge on these creatures, but hopefully start predicting where they'll be at what time of the year, and we can get ahead of them. We got just a few minutes left until we've got to do our commercial break. I was going to say we would just try to close it out, but we still got too much to cover, so we don't have time to close it out. We're not hit everything we need to hit. So with the zones, Robbie, that area in Pennsylvania is definitely Zone Delta corridor, but I think that also kind of overlaps with some of the other noises and strange phenomenon, because they were talking about lights in the sky, missing people. I think that's an overlap zone.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely sounds like or fits that.
And that's what we've discovered, is where these zones overlap is where the behavior changes. And we've discovered that here in the Ozarks, where what is the Ozark? The Ozark one, is it zone?
Is it golf?
Zone golf. That's right. There's zone golf and zone delta overlap right here in the Ozarks, and that's more than a little disturbing. Yeah, the Ozarks Triangle is zone golf. You hit that one on the head, Bubba. But
I thought so.
What's the word I'm looking for? The last 3 years or so of everything we've been learning has validated everything we're putting into everything we've discovered about the zones. It makes perfect sense. Lone Queen says the number of reports you can find makes me wonder how many reports are still buried, and if those reports are really deadly ones. They're scary, but not usually deadly. I would say for every one report we get, we probably at least 10 we're not getting. And in a lot of cases, God knows how many, just abandoned vehicle stories or hitchhiker who never made it to their destination could be cryptid related. But especially in cases where people are out hiking alone or camping alone, they just disappeared into the backcountry, and God knows how many times that's happened, and we've never known a thing about it because either nobody was looking at them or it was just reported as a mundane missing person.
Yep. Forgot to pack for dragons, and the dragon attacked me.
Let me see. Seeing if I missed any questions. Just one says, a full moon a good indicator there could be some bipedal cryptid activity in hot zones. Well, most predator activity seems to increase around full moons, so I think it's safe to assume. Ask anybody that's worked in law enforcement or EMT or worked in a fire EMS, worked in an emergency room. Ask them if the full moon affects things, because it does. Things go crazy on nights of the full moon. I was always so happy when I would check the calendar and see I was off that night.
Mm-hmm.
Like, whoo, duck there. I'd get a call. Do you want to come in tonight? No, I don't. I really, really don't. Sherry Porter says healthcare. Yeah, you know what we mean. You know exactly what we mean. Yeah, Arlen says hospitals hate full moons. K. Bowers, full moon ain't no joke. Yeah. Mondoc, yeah, I was the same way when I worked in the jail. The inmates got crazy around the full moon. Don't know why. It's always happened. More fights, more just crap. I mean, things went nuts.
Well, just think of where the word lunatic comes from.
Comes from the word luna for moon.
Mm-hmm.
Roxanne says, yes, I went through full moon in nursing homes and in the hospital. Yeah. Anybody that's worked in any of the emergency services fields will tell you the full moon does affect things. Vicky says, oh, Michelle Richards says all moons at Walmart. Oh yeah, I can see that. Vicky Dennison says full moon always wanted to call in at the ER. It was always crazy. Oh yeah. You got the people who wanted to fight. You got all not to put a fine point on it. You got the lunatics on full nights of the full moon. And when I was working in the hospital as part of the security team, I tell you, we fought more on those nights, like right before and right after a full moon, than we did the rest of the month combined.
Yep.
Well, we're going to have to take another quick break to pay the bills. So this would be another great time to top off that coffee, walk the laundry, fold the dog, and we will be right back.
The new book, How to Research a Haunted House by paranormal investigator Margie Kay and professional researcher Violet Wisdom, is now available from Unex Media. This one-of-a-kind book explains how to do research on a house with uncommon methods and resources used by historic home researchers, and how to determine who may be doing the haunting and why. How to Research a Haunted House can be used by homeowners, renters, investors, and it should be in the library of all professional paranormal investigators. Get this unique book at unexmedia.com or Amazon.com. That's unxmedia.com or Amazon.com.
Hey everybody, this is Kerry Pocket Doc Davis from Dark Angel Medical, and you are listening to DA Ex Machina with DA Roberts. You may recognize me or some of my products from Dark Angel Medical in some of the Apex Predator, Lakeview Man, and Wild Hunt books, and you can get those products at www.darkangelmedical.com, along with training classes on how to use those products and save a life. Shoot us an email at info@darkangelmedical.com and be the difference.
In a world where monsters still walk the earth, one author dares to face them. From the brutal cryptid horror of the Apex Predator series to the Ozark legends that stalk the night in Lakeview Man, from the elite warriors of codename Wild Hunt to the relentless investigations of the Nightmare Hunter and the frontier terror of Dark Frontiers. When the Dead Rise, the Ragnarok Rising saga unleashes pure zombie apocalypse fury. And across the stars, war rages in the Lost Legion and Man's Marauders. And in the realm of myth and steel, the world of Vanguard calls to those born for legend. Cryptids, zombies, sci-fi warfare, epic fantasy. This is the universe of D.A. Roberts.
Robbie, I'll be right back.
Okay. So anybody got any questions about what we've been going over that maybe I can answer? I can't put them on the screen, but I'll do my best to answer them. I hope it wasn't that, AJ. We're going to be here a minute if that was that. Callan, I guess Moon Valley would probably fall under zone golf. I don't know exactly where the I know Drury Mincy in that area isn't. White, would you think that would be that zone, or I think it would fall under zone golf because that's in the Ozarks. Yeah, Vincent, I think you see an uptick of those when it gets a little bit warmer. Will I still be open as a crypto investigator right now if I work?
Sorry, brother.
It's all right.
Whew.
Just a guy, I've worked for agencies that kind of laughed at you for believing in that kind of stuff. So yeah, I don't think that would affect me at anything. I think I would still be the same as I am now. Paul, they're doing. I guess they're doing okay. I mean, people are still buying them. So. Which is the biggest surprise to me.
Candy Stuff Course says, how often are the reports of psychic communication with these creatures? Trying to think of how I want to answer that. How do I put this delicately?
We don't look into that kind of.
We really
do, but that we don't look for that type of report.
Yeah, we try to stick to things that are grounded in, well, frankly, reality. I think that incidents like that are probably their imagination, to be honest. Mary says, how do you fold dishes? Very carefully. Dr. Sharp says, is there a place to get your zone maps and descriptions? We're working on that. We're going to be posting a bunch of that. And in fact, I am working on a nonfiction book about cryptids, and we're probably going to talk about the zone theory at length in that book. So there'll definitely be more coming on the zone theory.
He said somebody asked if I was still making knives. I said,
Oh, okay.
I've answered that several times, maybe here and there, but with the books and everything else, I don't have time to.
Yeah.
I've got a few that I'm working on. Once I get those done, because I'm doing it by myself, and I got usually one day a week that I could devote. And if it's cold like it has been, I can't even do it that, so I don't even get a chance to work on them.
I know you lost your help.
Yeah. So.
Jumping back to the story there. There were multiple creatures obviously at that location. Clearly they have enough of an intelligence that they can work together. I mean, wolves hunt in a pack, but this seems to be go a little deeper. Like maybe some form of actual communication. And there are a lot of these stories where groups of them work together, but I don't know if it in cases where you only see individuals. Like when I had my sighting, I only saw one. I don't know if that's because that was like an individual that was no longer part of a pack, or if you just saw the one. I'm going to probably lean toward the latter. I'd say if you saw one, there's probably others nearby. And I think these every one of these cases tonight have definitely showed a clear level of intelligence and intent.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, so we had 6 regions, 6 different stories of escalating terror, 6 encounters where the creatures didn't just appear; they persisted. From Mississippi to Washington to Oregon to Texas, Michigan to Pennsylvania, the pattern was the same: observation, encirclement, contact, predation, then attempted entry. Zone Delta, it's not just a theory, folks. It's a map. It's a warning, and it's a pattern that repeats in areas across the country. And tonight, you've heard those files. So when the sun comes up and the world pretends the night never happened, the footsteps, the shadows, the things that move just beyond the porch light, daylight washes it all away, but it doesn't erase it. Because the creatures that don't leave when the sky turns blue, they just wait, they watch, and they learn. Tonight we walk through 6 different regions, six places where families, hunters, and entire communities face the same truth. Some things out there just don't appear. They return, they escalate, and they don't stop until they decide the night's over. From Mississippi to Washington, Oregon to Texas, Michigan to Pennsylvania, the pattern's pretty unmistakable. Observation, encirclement, contact, predation, attempted entry. Zone Delta is not a myth. It's a map. It's a warning. It's a blueprint of how these creatures behave when the sun goes down and the world gets quiet enough for them to move. And before we close out tonight, I want to remind you again, we're all in good health, we're not going anywhere, and we don't plan on disappearing anytime soon. The show's for entertainment purposes only, and these cases are presented exactly as they were reported. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell, and share this episode with someone who thinks the night is empty, because the more you learn about the zones, the more you realize the dark isn't empty at all. So thank you guys for joining us for episode 407, the Night Siege Files. And until next time, keep your lights low, keep your doors locked, and keep your eyes on that tree line. So before we wrap things up completely, yes, Miss Lene, this channel is for entertainment purposes only. Boomsicle. Yeah, we have a live show every Wednesday and Saturday. We do another show on Mondays called Monday Mayhem, but it's not cryptid related. It's about writing. So, yeah, you guys have periodically tonight. You guys have been seeing words from our sponsors. All the affiliate links have been there tonight, so check them all out. The links are all in the chat. You guys can click on any of them you like. You've seen Doc's commercial a couple of times. Before we go, want to do a shameless plug for the books. You can check out my books, Robbie's books, Doc's book, or Miss Luca's books as well. All on Amazon, all available in Kindle, print, and audio. Doc's is coming in audio. Or you can find Luca's at lucatjacobs.com or mine on daroberts.net. But if you like cryptids, if you like scary stories, if you like things that go bump in the night, you're going to love our books. So I hope you'll check them all out. And while you're at it, make sure you to share those stories with everybody that enjoys those kind of stories, and to make sure you stop by Amazon and leave a review, because those really help. And again, another thing we always want to talk about is the 22 a Day Foundation. We lose 22 veterans a day to suicide, and that is entirely too many. That's 22 too many, to be precise. And never has that been more significant than what recently happened here. To make you understand that the price that is paid for our freedom and our safety by these men and women in uniform. And so check on your friends and family who've worn a uniform in any capacity. Veteran, first responder, doesn't matter what role they played or how they played it. Check on them. Let them know you're thinking about them. Let them know you care, because at least 22 times a day, the hard days are winning. And I guarantee you there's some folks right now that are going to be dealing with a lot of very tough things. Survivor's guilt is brutal, and we've got multiple entire departments who just saw what happens when someone goes as bad as they can go. We got 2 deputies paid the ultimate price, and 2 more in the hospital. So keep them in your prayers, folks. Reach out to your friends and family. Say an extra prayer for those men and women in uniform tonight. And next time you see one uptown, thank them for their service, because they're dealing with things that most folks will never understand. Keep them in your prayers. Let's hope they get home safely at the end of their shift, and make sure we're letting them know that we appreciate them. So, folks, thank you guys for hanging out with us tonight. Appreciate you guys being with us. Robbie, you want to take us out in a toast?
Good thing. So, everybody, raise a glass, doesn't matter what you're drinking. This is from the old Irish drinking song, The Parting Glass. It's about saying goodbye to those who have gone on before us. It goes like this: but since it fell into my lot that I should rise and you should not, I'll gently rise and softly call. Good night and joy be to you all. Good night. Slanjava. See you Saturday. Thanks for being with us.
Slanjava. See you guys on Saturday.
Plains, the winds are howling, saloon doors swinging, shadows growling. 3 lawmen stand tough as rawhide. Yeah, Doc DA, nothing can abide. Whiskey shots and poker faces, staring down the darkest spaces in this town where legends roam. These boys bring justice, sending evil home. Cryptid lawmen, wild and free, hunting monsters for all to see. With silver bullets and grit of steel, they fight the darkness, make the demons squeal. From dusty canyons to moonlit plains, justice rides with wind and rains. Cryptid lawmen, a fearsome sight, standing tall against the endless night. Jet wind's a howler, claws of steel. Doc's a biter, makes the devil real. But DA's a shifty one, a shape-shifting soul. Can turn to anything, takes any form, takes control. Tonight the chupacabras come to town, sucking the life from all around. But these lawmen, they ain't afraid. They'll face the darkness unafraid. Cryptid lawmen, wild and free, hunting monsters for all to see. With silver bullets and grit of steel, they fight the darkness, make the demons squeal. From dusty canyons to moonlit plains, justice rides with wind and rain. Cryptid lawmen, a fearsome sight, standing tall against the endless night. Full moon rises, bat wings flap, the air grows cold, a chill and trap. But these lawmen, they're ready to fight underneath the pale moonlight. Jet and Doc transform with a howl. DA shifts, becomes a night owl. Together they stand, a force so strong against the evil right in the wrong. Cryptid lawmen, wild and free, hunting monsters for all to see. With silver bullets and grit of steel, they fight the darkness, make the demons squeal. From dusty canyons to moonlit plains, justice rides with wind and rains. Cryptid lawmen, a fearsome sight, standing tall against the endless night.